Number 15, Oregon State at number 6, Oregon. And I mentioned those rankings. Those are the AP poll rankings because we're currently recording this on a Monday night. So we don't know quite yet what the college football playoff rankings will be. But right now, number 15 at number 6, 8:30 p.m. on Fox is the time for that game. The storyline is, again, we've said this before, some other rivalries. This is the last game in a storied rivalry. They're only 40 miles apart. This is their 127th game between Oregon and Oregon State. When you look at that in terms of the rivalries that have played the most games in FBS history, that's tied for 4th behind Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Auburn, and then you got tied for 4th. You got Oregon, Oregon State, Miami, Ohio, Cincinnati, and Stanford, California, are the other teams that are tied for that one as well. So they've met every year since 1945, but that's ending this year because Oregon is leading the Pac-12 for the Big Ten, and they don't have an opening on their non-conference slate until at least the 2029 season. So we're not going to see this game maybe for a very long time, but at least for another 5 or 6 years because Oregon's schedules are already locked and loaded already. But Oregon State now, man, they have an opportunity to deal one last blow to Oregon for not only destroying the conference that Oregon State is still a part of right now, but also maybe, ruin their playoff chances as well with Oregon, basically one loss away from being eliminated from college football playoff contention. So another kind of sad storyline, but this is the last, civil war that we're going to get for quite a long time, which is pretty sad.
I never would have guessed that Miami, Ohio, and Cincinnati was that high.
Neither did I.
I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice that they play every year, to be honest with you. But
yeah,
no, yeah, this is. I mean, and if you're gonna have this be the last one, it's still incredibly high stakes. Look, Oregon is one loss from being out of the playoff picture.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They need to run the table. They need to beat Washington again. All that stuff. Oregon State. They played a good game last week. I think the conditions were right for them to win. The weather played a big factor, and I'm having a hard time with them because I'm not sure that those weather conditions make it hard to really sometimes gauge who's obviously the better football team or this, and it really played into their style of play with the run game and the offensive line and as rugged as they want to be. And they still came away short. This is an interesting matchup because the rivalry thing plays, and obviously we have it with all these games this week where the rivalry thing plays.
Yep.
But the one, watching it on Saturday, the one thing that became really apparent to me, and I talked about last week with Oregon State, the coverage unit struggling, right? That wasn't as big a thing other than they didn't really have an answer for Odunze, but Michael Penix was only pressured 4 times last week. And Oregon State, I told you, they don't blitz. They only blitzed him 6 times and the entire game. And you can't just send 4 at him. And Washington's really good in pass protection, but we've talked about Oregon and their pass protection. And it's the best we've seen maybe ever, honestly. Yeah. Their pressure rate still only sits at 9.6%. And I've mentioned this before. Usually the leaders in the nation are hovering around 13. So it's the outlier of outliers. You have the best center in pass protection, the best right guard in pass protection, the best team like ever. And if Oregon State's not going to get a pass rush going in this game either, I'm not really sure how they're going to slow this down. It's that. And I understand, Uiagalelei, streaky. I'll cut him some slack because it was just absolutely pouring. I mean, you just can't throw the ball in that weather. And Penix still managed to make 5 big time throws, which is nuts. But they're going to need Uiagalelei to be really, really good in this game because I'm struggling to see how the Beavers defense keeps up with what Oregon has going on their offensive line. And plus Bo Nix just getting rid of the ball. He gets rid of the ball so quick and it goes to the right spot. Their screen game is crazy. They can take any play in the screen game 70 yards. This is a tough task. This is another tall task for Oregon State. And I wonder if their defense and they played relatively well last week, especially on the back end, didn't get much pass rush, but this might even be with the balance Oregon has an even tougher task.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, this offense has been second in EPA per play, right behind LSU, when we know how ridiculous LSU's offense has been this year. So Oregon, I mean, the offense just doesn't have a weakness anywhere. I mean, you have a Heisman candidate in Bo Nix, who I think still might be the leader in terms of odds to win the Heisman Trophy. You got the best offensive line in terms of pass protection in America. You got an incredible run game too, led by Bucky Irving, and then the receiving core is fantastic. You got Troy Franklin might be playing his way into first round conversations. Tez Johnson has been a star for them. Bo's actually adopted brother, Tez Johnson, which is a really, really cool story that I encourage you to watch our Bo Nix interview that we did. You know, he talked about extensively how excited he was to play with his adopted brother, and now they're killing it together, which is really, really cool. But yeah, this offense, and you got Will Stein drawing it up beautifully as well. I just, there's not really a weakness on this offense. And you take away one area, they could beat you in so many different areas. So it's one of the best offenses in college football for that reason, which is why I'm looking at the other side of the ball and saying, man, Oregon State has one thing that they do really, really well offensively, and that is pound the rock, man. They have the most physical offensive line in the country. Oregon, this is actually an interesting matchup. Oregon is the best by far in pass blocking. Oregon State is the best by far in run blocking. Talisa Fuaga, the rest of the guys they have in that offensive line have been absolute road graders this year. 84.2 run blocking grade this year. That leads the nation. They are sixth in the country in terms of EPA per run. So in order for Oregon State to really keep pace in this game, I think the bread and butter of their offense needs to be the bread and butter in this game, and they need to really pound the rock, because then it opens up some avenues for DJ Uiagalelei to make some plays off play action too, which is where he's really excelling this year and actually having a better year than I think most people are giving him credit for. But it really starts and ends with the run game. I don't think this is a game that you can go in and say, okay, DJ, you got to go toe to toe with Bo Nix in this game and really expect to come out on top. I think this is where you need Damian Martinez, you need the offensive line to get push in that run game and take down Oregon that way. And Oregon, they're getting kind of been average this year in terms of run defense. They're right now 50th in the country with 4.8 yards per attempt allowed. They're right in that top 50-ish range too for run defense grade. So pretty average Oregon run defense. So I think there will be opportunities for Oregon State to really slow this game down and keep their defense off the field, which with Oregon, that's really the name of the game, is just keep your defense off the field and, you know, try to make this as low scoring and as slow of a game as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Oregon State, you have to just lean into your identity, and the one counterpunch with that is Oregon. So I've talked before about Oregon State runs a boatload of outside zone. They want to get off tackle, and essentially, especially with tight ends, run the same play over and over and over. Now, I'm going to throw the small sample caveat in here because it's only a few dozen snaps. But Oregon actually against outside zone has the number one run D grade in the country against that concept specifically. Yeah. Otherwise, you know, I'd have to look into this, probably some other things, if it's counter, if it's power things, gap schemes, things like that. But trying to run side to side on Oregon, you know, they have a really fast defense that they just flow together very well. It's a problem. I think they have the ability to challenge the foundation of this Oregon State offensive. I just thought of the brothers thing too. How about what Patrick Herbert's doing for them also on the offensive side? But I mean, you mentioned the brothers thing, and I was like, wait, isn't that? Yeah, that's right. But but no, I think Oregon, now again, Oregon State, they have no other choice. They have to lean into the identity. That even if that number, and again on tape it looks good, but it is a very small sample, I'll admit it. They got to lean into it, and I think actually, for as much as the rain last week, and I don't know if it's going to again this week. I know Pacific Northwest it always is, but kind of help them. It didn't help Uiagalelei get into the play action, and then they got behind, and especially getting to the drop back late in the game. It just wasn't happening because he really wants to take those vertical shots. He's not going to nickel and dime you through the rain and conditions, even though he's got a huge arm. Absolutely. But he's not a nickel and dimer like that. He's looking for 20-plus yard shots. So they still have to lean into it. If they're going to win this game, they still have to be the more physical football team. There's no reason to change it now. They are what they are, and they've gotten this far. And if they're number 15, last week they were number 11. It's gotten them this far, and they're just going to have to continue to ride it. And their best chance of winning this game is being the more physical team, especially offensively.
Yeah, absolutely. You just reminded me too of, you mentioned Patrick Herbert, Justin Herbert, obviously little brother. Justin obviously been a great quarterback for the Chargers, no matter what people tell you, for a number of years now. It's pretty funny now that Bo Nix is throwing passes to Patrick Herbert when Bo Nix's first ever college victory was against Justin Herbert in that game. I remember that Oregon Auburn game back in
Oh, it was like
2019.
crazy. Wasn't it like last second he
Last
did
second, yeah, that was
something on the
true.
last drive?
Yeah, Bo was a 5-star true freshman starting for Auburn. And if he made that, last second game winning play, and that was, everyone was kind of hyped up for Bo Nix. And obviously the Auburn tenure of his career didn't really go as planned after that. But still, it's pretty funny thinking about how long Bo Nix has been a starting quarterback in college. I mean, it's been 2019, 2020, 21, 20, he's been 5 years the starting quarterback in college, whether at Auburn or Oregon, just because of the COVID-19 rule. So it's crazy now. Whereas Justin Herbert's on his second contract in the NFL, and Bo Nix beat him in college, and Bo Nix is now in his fifth year in college as well. So Bo Nix has been playing for a long time, man, and his final year in college might culminate in a Heisman Trophy, but only if they win this game, Dalton. So ultimately, who do you think wins the final Civil War for the foreseeable future?
I like the Ducks a lot in this game. In Autzen, the big thing for me, again, watching last week, just the pass rush was non-existent, and Bo Nix leads the Power Five from clean pockets in completion percentage and yards, and he's thrown 31 touchdowns from a clean pocket. If you, and I know it's hard to get to him. Look, Oregon's offensive line is even better than Washington's, and they only got to Penix 4 times all night. I'm having a hard time seeing how their defense keeps up. I totally understand what they're gonna try to do it again. They're gonna try to get physical, slow the game down, time of possession, the same things they do to everybody. But again, when they've played legitimate passing attacks, they've struggled on the back end. This could be a big game for Troy Franklin. We saw what Odunze did last week, even through the rain, just back shoulder city, man. He looked like Devontae Adams out there. I don't. Oregon State, it's like if this game, it's that thing of like, well, if this game goes their way to their pace and all that stuff, sure, they could win it. But it feels the same as last week where they're just trying to do all that to keep themselves in it and maybe one drive to finish it off. But I don't think Oregon, especially in Autzen, if you can't get to Nix, I mean, I don't know how many teams in the country can with this O-line, the way it's playing right now and the way this offense is schematically. I'm going to take the Ducks. It's probably going to be high scoring again. I'm going to take the Ducks 45 to 27. I think it's going to be pretty. I think Oregon, it's another one. It's kind of like Georgia, not as bad as Georgia, Tennessee last week. I think Oregon State's better than that, but I have an elite team against what it just took us longer to find out because of the way their schedule was. I think Oregon State's closer to a solid team than an elite team playing with Oregon. And props to them. They played a tight game, pouring rain. Look, if it was better weather, I don't know that would have been so close with Washington. I felt pretty confident Washington was going to win that game, even on the road. I like Oregon a lot in this game.
Yeah, same. I got Oregon winning this game as well. I got 38-24. Again, I think you said it perfectly where Oregon State, I know I've been kind of down on Oregon State and their fans really didn't like me that much when I had them much lower than 11th like they were last week. And I still don't agree with them being 15 this week. I think that's still crazy. But I still think this is a solid team. This is a good team that has played close. All their losses, I would give them, all of their losses have been close losses this year. I think all of them have been, they lost to Washington State by 3 points. They lost to Arizona by 3 points. They lost to Washington by 2 points. So it's been a field goal or less for every one of their losses. I just don't think they have the wins to justify still being a top 15 team, even with 3 losses this year. But I still think I think they'll keep it relatively close for a little bit, but I agree with you. I think Oregon, this is a team that just feels like they're going to pull away at the end. And yeah, 38-24. I got Oregon winning this one, winning the final game of a storied rivalry, and then setting up basically a de facto playoff game that we got next week between Oregon and Washington, assuming Washington, of course, takes care of business with Washington State. But even if they don't, even if Washington loses, they still probably is a playoff game between Oregon and Washington, with the winner not only winning the Pac-12 conference, but most likely going to the college football playoff as well. So I got Oregon in this game, beating Oregon State in the final Civil War.